Hi, this is Bill Walton, and you're listening to The Bill Walton Show. And I'm here with my friend and frequent guest, Brian McNicoll. Brian's a veteran newspaper reporter and editor who grew up in the sports department of a daily newspaper, which is a great attribute for any writer, I think. Went to work on Capitol Hill and worked in a variety of DC policy organizations, including the Heritage Foundation and the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He's an independent writer now who grew up in Louisiana and lives in Virginia. And Brian has also written and thought extensively about the United States Postal Service, which is much in the news. It's become a political piñata, with most recently Nancy Pelosi accusing Trump of destroying the post office because they're going around collecting old, obsolete mailboxes. And that's just the latest in the long story of post office stories. Brian, where are we here? What is this about?
So the Democrats want to have a mail-in election. They want to put mail-in voting in states that don't already have it. So there are some states that do it now, and they do it efficiently, and they know how to do it, and it's not a big problem. But states that don't have it, what happens in the mail-in, first thing is to set this up. The difference between mail-in and absentee voting, because one of the big talking points is, hey, Trump mails in his vote. No, Trump votes absentee. In absentee, you contact your registrar and you say, I can't be there for the election, send me a ballot. So the registrar makes sure you're registered, they send you one ballot. In mail-in voting, they mail out the ballots to the voting list, which we all know voting lists are not, the hygiene on those are terrible. No one knows who's on it or who should be on it and so forth. Like, I regularly get mail for the last 5 or 6 people who lived in this house, right? We used to also get, there was one of them, I guess, didn't pay her bills, and we used to get these dunning notices and the sheriff, stuff taped to the door and so forth. So, they don't really know where we all are. And they shouldn't. The government doesn't need to know
Are these ballots mailed to people, or are they mailed to houses? Is it like
they're mailed to people, but the lists are not current. So there's no telling how many people with my address here in Reston are signed up to vote.
Well, who decides whether this is going to be a mail-in election? Absentee ballots have been used for years and years and years. The U.S. military, a lot of people living overseas and traveling have used them, and it's a very well-defined process and relatively free from fraud. Yet, as you point out, mail-in ballots are vastly not free from fraud. But who decides? Is it the Federal Election Commission?
Is it state election law? How elections are administered is state law.
But if you're in Colorado, for example, and you decide you want to do mail-in, and you're next door in, I don't know what's next door, Montana, I suppose. I think that's north of it. And they don't want to allow it. And yet you get a federal election, Trump v. Biden. Does that mean you'd have in some states mail-in and some states no mail-in?
Right. Well, there's already 7 states that do only mail-in voting. And they absolutely should keep doing that. If you have your system set up, then you're in good shape. But if you're trying to, you go into a place like Illinois, and stand this up 70 days before an election, just dramatically change how people vote, there's no way that that's going to be,
I didn't realize that there's 7 states that already have only mail-in. They have no in-person local polling places.
Right.
What are some of those states?
Colorado is one, Utah.
I just got lucky on that one. Yeah. So that's already happening, and it's not a problem. Now, so let's circle back to the post office and what's going on with that. You've written about the post office for almost 15 years, and it's been losing money that whole time. $50-60 billion over the last 15 years, and
right.
It's on track. It's on track this year, I believe, to lose about $10 billion. And the statistics for their services are, it's hardly a growth business. The number of first-class letters have dropped by almost 40% in the last decade, and the only place where they really can make money is on that first-class delivery service even though that's shrinking, and then theoretically they could make money on package delivery. Tell me about the economics of the post office.
Okay, so the post office, they have a monopoly on two things. Only the post office can put something in your mailbox, and only the post office can handle first-class mail. So for those things, the first-class mail is its most profitable product. Like you said, the internet kind of crushed first-class mail. We pay our bills online. All the things that went through the mail don't go there. We talked about this last night.
Wedding invitations are all now Evite, and that
right.
Yeah.
My kids they've had about 10 pieces of mail in their life, right? No one uses it, but package volume has gone up. So the post office is trying to capture this, since they have this big last mile network, right? They hit 160 million addresses a day, and they're the only ones who can do that, and they're the only ones who can make some of the delivery. So they sort of have the other people kind of by the tail a little bit, the other delivering people. So what they're trying to do is make profit off of that and to shore up the rest of it. But they don't know how to price it, since they're weighing between things they have a monopoly on and things they don't have a monopoly on, such as package delivery. They jumble those costs and don't assess them properly. It's kind of it's a unique situation. It's not, I don't know that it goes on anywhere else in business.
Well,
so
in business,
they underprice their stuff.
Fortunately, maybe I worked my way through business school teaching accounting, and there's generally accepted accounting principles, but there's also cost accounting, which is where you're careful about allocating your overhead to different kinds of products. And as I understand it, the Postal Service allocates about 5% of their overhead to package delivery. And yet and that was set years and years and years ago, but now package delivery is 25% of their volume, but they're still allocating only 5% of their overhead, which means they're missing billions and billions of dollars of costs in their pricing calculation.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And, like for instance, they've had to buy a whole new fleet of trucks that are better suited to carry packages, right? All the little Grumman delivery vehicles that they've used for 30 years now, they're having to go through and systematically replace them all. That's like a $60 billion expense. And it's all to support the package side of the business.
Well, how's the Postal Service been losing money, and yet people say it's a separate corporation? How they've been funding or financing those losses for the last 15 or 20 years?
Well, they had a $15 billion line of credit back in about 2008. They got a $10 billion line
of credit from who? The Treasury, the Fed?
From the Treasury.
Okay.
From the first coronavirus relief bill, they got a $10 billion loan guarantee. Beyond that, they have cut services. They used to be in like department stores and walk up things. They cut out all that. They've cut some employees. They've gone from union full employees to these city carrier people. They call them, where your only job is handling Amazon packages. They're non-union. They make about $8 or $10 an hour. So that's part of it. The labor costs of the post office are a third higher than FedEx, UPS, those guys. So, that's another thing they're battling is, you have a union basically undermining any chance at profitability, and they've sort of got you over a barrel.
Well, Romina Baccia at Heritage written about this, and she thinks labor costs are the big problem. Sounds like they are a big problem.
They are a big problem.
But how do the postal, with all this uproar, Pelosi and Schumer claiming fraud, and they're claiming that the Trump's interference with the post office is just like the Russian interference with the election. Sounds familiar.
The latest hoax.
But the postal workers union just endorsed Biden. What are the politics there?
Well, there's two postal unions, and they both endorse Biden. And the most recent one, the American Postal Workers Union, the statement they gave was really harsh and tough on Trump. And so, I was going to ask my friends on the other side of the aisle, if those two unions had come out for Trump, would you be pushing for mail-in elections? They'd come out that stridently on the other side. Would you be for this? Because I don't think they would. Because I don't understand how you would trust, the election to be in the hands of people who have publicly denounced you in this way.
Well, yeah, big factor. I mean, I don't think we think the postal workers would be complicit in this if there is a problem with mail-in balloting. Maybe
they have been. There've been some
what do you
cases
mean?
where they find postal
I
workers.
still find myself naive on a lot of these
dumping
things.
ballots. Yeah, I mean,
so how so? I mean, what are the examples of some of the ways that it's been abused?
Well, like they found 120,000 ballots in trash cans in a dumpster in Nevada. They find, ballots dropped off that haven't been made out, or ballots not delivered. There's been like 7 or 8 cases already made against postal workers for cheating in elections on behalf of Democrat candidates.
What about the battleground states? How many of them are mail in, and how many of them are in person?
Well, Colorado is a battleground state. That's a mail in.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan.
Those are not.
North Carolina.
Pennsylvania is trying to do something.
Okay, but the fight's going to be at the state level as to whether this happens. Right. And what are the odds now? How's that shaping up? Is this once again a partisan thing where you got a Democrat-controlled legislature would be pushing for it, and therefore it might happen?
Well, in Nevada, they kind of snuck into town and passed a law about this, and to make Nevada a mail-in state. What could go wrong, right? And the Justice Department our election people have sued to stop it from taking over in this way. And I'm watching that suit, because if they get an injunction, they send a signal to a lot of other states not to try it. I don't think they have. I don't trust this, and I think the polling is about 60% of the people are skeptical of the integrity of mail elections, and I think that's something you're going to have to think about.
So, coming back to is there any other aspect of the mail-in that we haven't talked about that you worry about? Is it? I'm trying to think about.
Well, I mean, you're talking about. Bundling gets to be a big deal here. What they call ballot harvesting, where your ballot might not make it, we'll come pick up your ballot and take care of it for you. That supposedly turned 4 congressional elections in California in 2018.
How does
4 Republicans who lost?
How does bundling work?
So I go pick up. You don't have to mail your ballot. I'll go all through my neighborhood, knock on your door. You give me your ballot. I'll take it down there and deliver it for you. Okay. So, if you haven't marked it, hey, I can mark it for you, So, it's that kind of thing. You're picking up people's ballots. You're dropping off bundles of ballots.
Well, this sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and U.S. Postal Service's cost and package delivery. Tell me about that relationship, and how did that come about?
So when the Postal Service was really trying to grow the package business to make up for the loss of the money for regular mail, first class mail, and so forth, they were kind of vulnerable. They were kind of begging for business. So he went in and made a deal with them. Deliver Amazon packages, we'll give you a huge volume, and it's a huge volume. And they still deliver about 3/4 of Amazon's packages, but they charge them $2, and it costs about $3.50 for the post office to deliver them. So that, every time that someone sends an Amazon package, you put a little dent in the post office bottom line.
And even that understates the real cost, because you're saying that extra $1.60 or something like that. That doesn't even include all the overhead that ought to be calculated.
Right. That's as they calculate it now, which
so
is
it's probably closer to cost. It should cost $5, and Amazon's paying $2.
Right.
So Jeff Bezos owns Amazon. He also owns this newspaper. What do they call it here in Washington? I think they call it the Washington Post.
Yeah, that's right.
We're talking about a highly partisan paper.
Right.
It's just I get a news feed for the headline, and it's just one thing after another. I mean, Trump is killing babies. Trump is getting us into war. Trump's not going to war. Trump is Trump. And now this thing with the post office. Are the Democrats protecting the relationship that Amazon has with the U.S. Postal Service?
That's a big part of what's going on. He's also donating millions and millions of dollars to Democrat PACs. So he's a big player in politics aside from owning the Washington Post.
So does this have traction? I mean, where do you see this going? It's in August, almost September, and we've got election coming up in 75 days or so. And what do you think is going to happen between now and Election Day?
I don't think states can stand up mail-in ballot systems between now and November. And I think that some are going to try, like in Pennsylvania is trying, and they sent some like sample ballots, and it hasn't worked out. They haven't arrived on time. They try to send them back. They don't arrive back on time. The post office sent a letter to, I think, 26 states the other day, one of which was Pennsylvania, saying, as we understand your election laws, we can't guarantee you that we can get those ballots out to the people and then back into the election officials in time. So, you either got to change the laws or change the procedures or do something to give us a better chance. It's not a matter of capacity. The new Postmaster General says they have plenty of capacity. This business about the mailboxes, they're not taking mailboxes off the street to thwart the election. That there's a lot of vandalism in those mailboxes. A lot of people, there's worry they put bombs in them. There's worry they hide weapons in them. And people have figured out how to stick a rope down and pull stuff back out of them. So that's why the mailboxes are coming off the street. And that's a long-standing thing. That was going on long before any of this.
Well, there are lots of visuals now of Postal Service's flatbed trucks with mailboxes on them, and that's supposed to be Trump ripping up mailboxes to keep people from voting. But it turns out that some 14,000 mailboxes were removed during Obama's presidency.
Right. I mean, the post office is getting those things off the street. They're making you come to them. It's a lot cheaper, and it's a lot more efficient. And people who have to mail, I mean, if you got to go somewhere to mail something, does it matter if it's the box out on the street or the post office a block away? Not really.
What do we have? Don't we have something like 160,000 post offices all over the country?
Yes.
So we're talking, 10% or less, and so many of them were not being used.
Right.
So if you're
never going to shut them. I mean, that's not really the place to look for it, because people do rely on it. People look at it as kind of a community center, a place to meet people. A lot of times they're within stores and so forth. And so, there's not any extra space needed for it. Their real estate costs are low. And, when you start running that at Congress, that's one thing that bipartisan poison. People do not want the post offices closed, and the political pressure will never ease off of that. That's not where to look for savings, because it's not going to happen.
Well, I live in a small town in Virginia, in Rappahannock County, Little Washington, and we lost our post office because of a lease, and the powers that be in DC somehow thought we didn't need a post office. Well, we're the county seat. We're also, I think the claim is that George Washington surveyed our town 250 years ago when he was a surveyor. So there's a lot of historical connection here. It's also a community center. And so
right.
We, through a lot of hard work, and we're now going to get our post office back, but it was clear they didn't really want to replace it. And I think in all these areas in our county, we've got, I don't know how many different post offices, 6 or 7, and they're pretty vital. I mean, people show up, you chat, it's all part of maintaining community. And some people believe that the pulling up all the local post offices is another way to get at civil society, which is they don't want people convening informally, and I'm going straight into some of the darker sides of this conspiracy, but
And you're in that's the most rural county in Virginia, right? Rappahannock?
we're the second least densely populated county in the state, and the next one is a coal mine county down in southeastern Pennsylvania. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of people. We don't even have a stoplight. So, if we don't have a post office, we don't have much to do here.
Here we go.
So, so the view is we'll probably keep the post office. They're going to disappear slowly, but the United States Postal Service has got to figure out its cost. We've got a new postmaster. I don't know if it's Postmaster General or what the title is, but what's his background?
So he owned a logistics company, and he is, so, his thing has been, high speed, high value mail processing. He's been in this business for a long time. So what he's done that has the Democrats spun up is he's saying they were spending $250 million a year on what they call extra trips. So the carrier is supposed to leave at 9 to go do his route. Okay. He leaves at 9. The mail that hasn't been processed by 9, is there on the floor of the post office. He goes back, he gets that, he makes a second delivery. What the new Postmaster General is saying, which is the private industry standard, is put all that mail in his bag at 9 o'clock. When he leaves at 9, he needs to have what he needs for the day, because we don't want to make second trips. We don't want to pay overtime. We don't want to buy all that fuel, and they're looking at this as when fully implemented, a $500 million savings, just making them do stuff on time, just making them honor the schedules they set out. So what had happened is, it's a union workforce, it's a pro-Democrat administration of the Postal Service, and they've sort of waived the rules when they needed to, and not made people do things on time.
So people have been complaining about the post office inefficiencies for decade after decade after decade. Right. And we finally get a CEO in there who's doing the right things to right size its cost and efficiencies and delivery schedules. And he's become a demon because of that.
Right.
Now, I think it also is, we need to point out he's a Trump donor.
Right. That's right. About $2.5 million. And he was running the Charlotte convention. He was putting that together before, it got moved to Jacksonville and then ultimately canceled.
And the Democrats have all got a bill, I believe, that says that they're not allowed to make any change to the post office, or they're supposed to roll the clock back to January 1st, 2020. So everything he's done, they want to unwind.
Right. Turtle will handle. McConnell's not going to take that bill up.
Okay, well, it's one of the many bad ideas that it's amazing, Brian. I've talked about this a lot. Everything has become political. I mean, right. The post office is now political. Sports is political. Music's political. Everything's political, and this is just the latest piñata. And I understand that he was appointed. Trump didn't appoint him directly. He was elected by the the Board of Governors.
Yes.
Of course, he probably helped influence that vote, but nevertheless, a lot of people thought it was a good idea.
They're asking for this bailout money. That's what it is. They call it other names, but that's what it is. But they've been asking for the bailout money for 4 or 5 years, and they've been moving back the date strategically, saying, hey, if you don't give it to us by, last September, the Postmaster General then said, if you don't give it to us by February, we'll be out of money. So, there've been this, if you don't give it to us, we'll have to close. Threat has been over the post office head for 5 years now.
Well, and the Postal Service also has not been funding its pension plan, has it?
Right. It hasn't made a payment into the pension plan since 2011. So they complain about, it's the pre-funding requirement. In 2008, Congress changed the way the post office was governed, and they said it had to pre-fund all its benefits. Now, FedEx and UPS are paying benefits too, right? It's not like the Postal Service is the only one paying benefits. In 2011, they just stopped paying it, and it would not make them So people act like, well, if you take that requirement off, they would be profitable. Their expenses are higher than their revenues. I mean, they would have lost money without any, and they haven't paid for any. They have about $160 billion problem now with regard to pensions and retiree health benefits.
So if you wanted to fix the post office as a CEO, you first would do, I expect, with, what's his name, Louis DeJoy. He's probably saying, okay, I want to know, I want to do a rigorous analysis of our cost structure. And I guess Congress asked his predecessor for that a couple of years ago, and she failed to produce it. And
correct.
As you point out, now it looks like she won't have an opportunity to do that because she's out of the job. She's out of the job. So you want to do a rigorous breakdown of the cost structure. And what are the major lines of business the post office is in?
So it's first class mail, it's marketing mail, it's packages, money orders. There's not much more to it than that.
So okay, that's pretty simple then. So what you then want to do is allocate your real cost to those and then price it accordingly.
Correct.
And you want to basically go after the package delivery business because that's the one that's growing.
Right.
But you go straight at Amazon if you do that. And
right.
probably if you cost it properly plus a profit margin, you're going to be charging Amazon maybe $6 a package instead of $2.
It may not even be that much because you have some efficiencies, right? You have a huge delivery network and all that. So you have some competitive advantages even in their competitive lines. Plus, they also make a lot of money since they're the only ones who can put it in a mailbox. They make money doing the last mile deliveries for FedEx and UPS.
So if we wanted to fix the post office, we'd do this cost analysis, we'd price the package delivery, we'd change expectations about what people want. Would going to 5-day delivery, would eliminating Saturday for postal operations? I mean, I wish they wouldn't. I like Saturday, but is that something that's on the table?
He had his first quarterly call the other day where he talks about the earnings situation, and he said no. He said he was not. He said they were prepared to meet the universal service obligation 6 days a week, every address in the country.
So that you got to like that. Now, do you change the cost of first class mail or the price?
Well,
we have to
it's already their most profitable thing, and I think that you've chased away enough customers already. You may have to stick with what you have.
And then how about the post offices? Can I keep my little post office in Little Washington? We don't take up much space, and the budget's not very big, and we've got an awfully sweet postmaster, Tina. I'd hate to lose Tina.
Right. I don't see that happening. I see them moving against that because that is one thing that nobody wins votes by closing post offices.
And then I've got a final question just to circle back to the voter issue. Do you think that if my belief is that the post office itself could handle mail-in ballots. It's not a question of the post office dumping stuff. I mean, there may be some occasions in Las Vegas maybe, but generally speaking, the post office has the capacity to handle this. Is that correct?
That's correct. He said that on the quarterly call. We're absolutely ready if every state in the country went mail-in voting.
Well then, okay, so let's you and me get to Louis and say we agree with your CEO turnaround plan, Louis. We're for you, but let's go. We got to start. Job one is Amazon.
That's right. And the other. That's not the only contract they have like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, all the other package delivery contracts. Yeah.
Right.
I bet he understands that given his background.
Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts because we're wrapping up here. I think next week we're going to talk about football, which is going to be fun.
I'm fired up for that. Final thoughts is this is not the post office. We don't need the post office to have an election. If you can riot, you could go to the polls and vote. Okay, so when they say, "Oh, we can't have the election because of the post office," that's not true. Most of these states have not even moved to implement a mail-in voting system. So, it's a whole bunch of hot water about absolutely nothing.
Well, okay. I think that sums it up. You've been listening to the Bill Walton Show, and I've been here with my friend Brian McNicoll, and colleague and continuing guest. And we've been talking about the United States Postal Service. It is fixable, and I do think we can have an election as planned. Stay tuned. We've got an upcoming episode. We're not sure when it'll come out, but we want to talk about college football and football generally in America in the fall season of 2020. And what I want to get into with Brian, because he's a political maven, is how canceling Big Ten football, which is where I got to watch a lot of football, might affect the election.
Yeah, it could.
Okay. So anyway, thanks, Brian. We'll talk next week.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Want more? Be sure to subscribe at thebillwaltonshow.com or on iTunes.